When a request arises mid-task, the mind instinctively seeks the quickest acceptable answer. Subtle cues such as tone, timing, and confidence can shape that response even before any facts are verified. Under stress or distraction, mental shortcuts can replace a thorough evaluation of available options. A single striking detail can serve as the catalyst that determines the entire decision in mere seconds. While these shortcuts conserve mental effort, they also heighten the risk of being manipulated and making avoidable errors. Consent can transition from a conscious agreement to an automatic compliance without us fully realizing it. Persuasion techniques frequently combine cues so that resisting feels impolite, risky, or socially uncomfortable. This combination can subtly transform everyday interactions into pressure that influences choices and spending habits. This analysis delves into shortcut thinking, the principle of reciprocation, consistency pressure, social proof, and 3 additional cues that amplify agreement. This video draws inspiration from the book Influence by Robert Cialdini. Subscribe for more insightful strategies on how to defend against persuasion techniques. Automatic thinking uses established rules that function effectively when time and attention are in short supply. The process simplifies complex decisions by narrowing down to one key cue that indicates the next step. That cue could be a price, language about scarcity, symbols of authority, or simply a confident-sounding statement. Once this cue captures attention, the rest of the information tends to receive less scrutiny than it warrants. This approach enhances speed but can also compromise accuracy when the cue is not reliable. It also facilitates persuasion, as a skilled communicator can select the cue that resonates with the audience. When a specific feature is positioned as crucial, competing elements may fade from view, even if they are more significant. Contrast effects can magnify this impact, making the same offer appear different depending on the order of presentation. Better decisions arise from recognizing the cue and re-establishing the important context before making a commitment. A smart next step is to pause and consider which single detail is influencing your choice and why. Reciprocation creates pressure to repay what we receive, even if it wasn't specifically requested. This operates as a learned social norm that views repayment as a sign of decency and fairness. Because repayment feels obligatory, a small initial favour can lead to a much larger follow-up request. This dynamic can result in uneven exchanges where the return favour far outweighs the original gesture or service. While this effect can nurture cooperation, it can also be leveraged to elicit compliance at will. When the obligation to repay is triggered, focus shifts away from whether the request is sensible or necessary. Free samples, unsolicited help, or small concessions can quickly instill a sense of indebtedness. Once that sense of debt develops, declining a subsequent request can seem like a violation of a fundamental social obligation. This concept connects to shortcut thinking because obligations often overshadow thorough assessments of costs and benefits. A practical safeguard is determining in advance when to accept gifts and when to simply decline repayment. Commitment is powerful because taking a definitive stance encourages consistency in behaviour. The underlying mechanism is both internal and social, as inconsistency can be perceived as weakness or unreliability. Small initial agreements can serve as the catalyst for a series of escalating requests. Once that first step is taken, later requests can be framed as simple follow-through rather than new decisions. This pattern influences behaviour since people are inclined to take actions that align with their previous statements and self-image. It can also solidify decisions, even when new information reveals that the original choice was flawed. Having a written plan or a public commitment can boost follow-through, even when motivation decreases later. While this can support achieving goals, it can also be exploited when the initial step is designed as bait. Regaining control involves treating each new request as a fresh choice, rather than a continuation of past commitments. If these patterns resonate with you, consider subscribing for more practical insights on recognizing pressure and making intentional choices. Social proof relies on observing others' actions as indicators of what is deemed correct or expected. This influence intensifies in times of uncertainty, as external cues seem more reliable than private judgments. This shortcut can foster effective learning, especially in unfamiliar situations with unclear outcomes. However, it can mislead us when the group lacks information, exhibits bias, or responds to flawed signals. Signals of public approval, popularity metrics, and visible consensus can rapidly shift perceptions of what is considered normal. These signals can overshadow actual evidence, making repetition and visibility appear as though they equate to truth. When many observers seem to agree, expressing disagreement can feel risky, even in the absence of direct consequences. This pressure can suppress doubts and accelerate decision-making beyond what careful evaluation would permit. Independence is regained when we focus on identifying which group possesses relevant knowledge, rather than merely who is largest. A simple next step is to seek out one credible and informed reference point before following trends that appear popular. 3 additional cues often drive quick agreement in everyday decisions: liking, authority, and scarcity. Liking operates through connection cues, authority is derived from expertise signals, and scarcity heightens perceived value by framing loss as urgent. Signals of warmth, similarity, and compliments can make a proposal feel safer than the actual facts may support. Titles, uniforms, or specialized terminology can lend credibility to instructions without independent verification. Claims of scarcity raise perceived value by presenting the loss as more pressing than potential gains. Time constraints or limited availability can narrow focus, making speed appear more important than accuracy. These cues often work alongside principles like reciprocation, consistency, and social proof to further diminish reflection. When these elements come together, the decision can seem obvious, even if the supporting evidence is lacking or irrelevant. Starting with protection involves separating the individual from the proposal and directly verifying credentials and assumptions. It's essential to regard claims of scarcity as something to verify, instead of a reason to bypass thoughtful analysis. The most effective influence occurs when decisions are made as quick reactions, rather than through careful comparisons. The aim is not to cultivate suspicion, but to enhance clarity in decision-making that aligns with values, evidence, and long-term goals. Shortcut thinking tends to prioritize a single cue, whereas influence principles offer cues that feel socially obligatory. Reciprocation fosters a sense of obligation, consistency reinforces previous commitments, and social proof uses the behavior of the crowd as a benchmark. Emotional factors like liking, authority, and scarcity lend weight to requests, making them seem safer, more credible, or more urgent. Over time, implementing these checks lessens impulsive agreements and enhances negotiations, sets boundaries, and improves everyday spending habits. The benefits multiply because fewer hasty decisions lead to fewer repairs, reduced regrets, and greater commitment to follow through. Begin with one practice, take a breath, identify the cue, and assess whether the full context justifies a decision. With practice, the pause becomes a natural response, turning compliance into a choice grounded in consideration rather than reflex. If you find clarity valuable, subscribe for more insights that simplify the recognition of persuasion tactics.